G'day folks, Sapper here with another World of Warships video. A little over a month ago I conducted a Q&A on Darklab. This particular video is a summary of most of the World of Warships / quirky questions. There is a second video which I will be linking down below but will remain unlisted, and that has a few questions relating to the war in Ukraine and as I saw things at the time, which was at the end of July. Without further ado, please enjoy this abridged version of the Darklab Q&A. First question off the racks is from Earl. When will you review HIPAA? So I will review HIPAA because she's a tech tree ship when I eventually get around to doing German cruises. And I've kind of wanted to do German cruises for a long time, but it doesn't get the votes. So that's the short answer. The long answer is, at the moment, at least until the end of the year, I'm really not looking at doing any line reviews because they're quite time intensive and I don't have time at the moment. There's been 101 things going on in real life and I've got an 18-month-old, so that's the longer form. Next one is from Sky. What can wargaming do to make matchmaking more attractive / less frustrating? That's a very good question. What they could do is do some sort of skill-based matchmaking. That's an immediate thing that could work. I don't think they will though, because their entire focus is based on keeping queue times down, keeping game frequency up, and while skill-based matchmaking could work, it would primarily only work during peak times. And the moment you hit off peak, which a lot of us Aussies and Kiwis often play on, you'd start seeing longer queue times, smaller number of ships in each game, and that would end up being a negative impact on the community, and you'd probably see player numbers drop because of that. That's sort of wargaming's thoughts on it. But aside from that, +1, -1 matchmaking, like a more of a focus on that during peak times. So, you know, they could definitely bake that in where it's sort of like current matchmaker, but the +1, -1's a higher priority. And so it tries to fill games like that first. But I don't know if they're even looking at it because the community's been crying for it for years. Next one from Sky. What could be done to make matches take longer and be less stompy? The short answer is not much. The long answer is less powerful or extremely niche type ships, but we're already down that road and I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon. You could tie it back to skill-based matchmaking, +1, -1 as well. That might help, but it's a big issue that, you know, not much can be done. Follow-up, do you believe divisions should be matched based on, I think it's solo battle matchmaking? SBMM, I'm just assuming it's solo battle stats. At the moment, the matchmaker pairs division numbers. So, you know, 3 tier 8 ships or 3 and 2, tries to match them. If you add a stat-based check to that, you're looking at longer queue times again. Wargaming won't go for it. Of all the ships in my port, which one do I regret grinding the most and regret buying the most? That is a very good question. I would say either Republic or Z52. Z52 is just completely outclassed by daring and by pretty much every destroyer at that tier. Republic though, I can't stand her. I love Alsace, I don't like Republic. So I'd probably say Republic, that's the big one, but it's a tier 10, so of course I was getting it. When will I join the carrier master race? Never. I'll play all ships, but I'm never going to be a CV main. I'm not good enough, it requires too much of a time input that I just don't have, and yeah, I'll just keep spamming Karga and... is it Lowlands? Anyway, whatever the tier 6 German one is, as I need to for naval battles. How does being a soldier influence my World of Warships playstyle? So, I'm born and bred a soldier. I think it's 18 years this year already clocked. Yeah. As part of that ethos, there's a institutionalized sort of military planning process that even if you didn't promote, you are exposed to day to day, and it sort of frames how you think. Basically, what's going on, what's our intent what's our mission, how are we going to do it, and then all of the things that back that up. And I just think like that all the time now, and have done for many years. And while the depth of that military planning process is quite expansive, the fundamental core elements frame how I approach games. So I'm always thinking in zoning, key terrain, caps, thinking about the game in a spatial context, because that's a large element of that military planning process. And a follow-up from that, how would I prevent overthinking while playing? I can't. So part of that military ethos is that you're always, particularly as an NCO, you're always thinking about all the inputs coming in and making new decisions. And probably one of the best bits of advice I've ever received is the only bad decision is one you don't make. So you constantly got to make a decision, because the thing is, you can make a decision and then 5 seconds later you can make a new decision that's got better info. And particularly in combat, not making a decision, you freeze on the spot, and that means people die. Whereas making a decision is almost always better, even if it's a slightly poor decision, because you can then correct that decision by making another one. And so I'm always quite assertive and constantly adjusting how I'm approaching the game second by second, minute by minute, based on the information I'm seeing. Doesn't mean I see everything, but yeah, so overthinking's not so much an issue. The key part is as long as you're making a decision. Alright, what else have we got? Next one is from Biolart. I can never pronounce that correctly. Do I desire a black bee? No. I don't think the ship should be in the game with its current mechanics. Radar and smoke combinations just shouldn't exist. It's bad game design. The ships have to be balanced far too extremely in other areas like reload and things like that to make them balanced. And I still think a black in the hands of a good player is just far too strong. Not as strong as it used to be comparatively. So when it was originally released, it was by far the most powerful Tier 9 destroyer. Now, not so much, but don't want it. Am I unhappy that black's default camo is actually white? Don't care, don't want black. Next one from Earl. What's my opinion on the CC program? Would I join it? The CC program is a pretty amazing thing, all things considered. It offers access to ships and devs in a way that most other games don't even consider, and I think a lot of the community forgets that. It's honestly pretty good. It's good for anyone who's looking at churning out content on a regular basis, because it gives them access to things earlier, but it's not for me. Even if I had the time, I still wouldn't want to be involved in it, mainly because I'm not worried about releasing a ship review or content that's on the immediate horizon. I'm more concerned with well thought out, well planned content that people can use for years to come. So the CC program doesn't offer me anything that I need, and if anything, it's a reputational liability, because some people, not many, but some would consider me a shill. So no, I'm never looking at joining the CC program. I don't think I ever would. Next one's from Fat Fluffy Penguin. What is my opinion on the wheels versus doors debate if no middle ground answer could be taken? Now, I think that this is it's sort of like a philosophical question of, I'm working off memory here, but I think it's got to do with the question of whether there's more wheels or doors in the world. I don't know, but if I had to bet, I would say wheels, because having a son, I've got 101 little tiny cars that he loves playing with, and they've all got 4 wheels, and there are exponentially more of them than we've got doors in the household. But yeah, fun question. Have I ever considered doing a line review like Notza did a while back? I don't watch Notza. I appreciate his niche and all that sort of stuff, but he's not a CC for me, or not a YouTuber I like to watch. However, I'm guessing it's some sort of the whole line in one video. That is something I've thought about doing many, many times. The main reason I haven't is time. Also, people tend to look for videos on a ship rather than the whole line. But it's something I always think about doing. Like, it's a good thing. The problem is that logically I'd want to do it before I do the line of reviews to frame those different reviews. But writing it, I would want to write it at the end, because then I could chart like the ratings of each ship or whatever, and so you could see bad ships, better ships, average ships, and that sort of thing, and I could do a graphic or something otherwise. I might do it at some point, but I haven't done it yet. It's one of 100 million ideas that I've got for videos. Will I do a review of the American heavy cruisers once I've finished playing through them? Maybe at some point. Probably not. I'm still wrestling with Baltimore. It's hard to play well on Asia with its limited range, and when you've got that sort of range on Asia, you kind of want to be able to be agile and bounce some shells, and frankly the saturation of 400 plus millimeter guns makes Baltimore far less attractive as a ship, and subsequently Buffalo and Des Moines are in the current meta, and I don't like static playstyles, and those ships feel like they were designed originally around that more sort of static-y, island-y playstyle, and there's just 101 better flankers to play. Another one from Scarly. What's your favourite ship line that you have played through so far? So initially I was thinking about maybe like thinking about the tier 10, but the whole line, I'd probably say Japanese battleships. Every single one of them, I can't think of a bad ship in that line, except for maybe Kawachi. And they're just solid at the core fundamentals of battleships, being a bit tanky with good guns. But then again, look, I always come back to cruisers, so I could even go, Italian heavy cruisers, amazing line. Tier 6 and up's great, so I'll say Japanese battleships. If given the opportunity, what ship line would I add to the game? Playstyle-wise, I want Japanese battlecruisers. It fixes the battleship line from a mechanics perspective, being that 4, 5, 8 are all technically battlecruisers, but I'm pretty sure Wargaming have already got that in the pipelines, so I would say Commonwealth, and I'd say cruisers, because I think if we get a Commonwealth line in the game, I would want the one that's more difficult for them to spin up, being cruisers, because destroyers a piece of piss. There's 101 different options. So Commonwealth cruisers, whether that be finishing heavy or light cruisers the whole way. Next one is from Grumpy. If I had the opportunity to reimagine submarines in the game, but still had to include them, what would I do? That's a very good question. I haven't thought about reimagining them, but I've analysed how they are in different iterations. First things first is trying to work out, how do submarines fit in a meta perspective, or where do we want them? And my instinct is some sort of ultra stealthy torpedo. And then with being able to submerge and that sort of stuff, how would that interact with the current ship types? And the way I initially viewed or thought that Wargaming would go with is that they work in a symbiotic relationship with destroyers, right? And in that sort of sense, they're an extra bit of eyes / support for a destroyer, and sort of work in that same sort of zone, maybe a bit further back, maybe a couple of kilometres behind, to provide spotting and torpedo support, things like that. To do that, destroyers would need some range on their ASW, so maybe 3-4 kilometres, something like that. And there's a lot of questions around which destroyer lines would need a way to spot them without hydro, because hydro is a key thing in that element. And that just ties back into all the issues we've got with submarines at the moment, which is around spotting and what happens in niche circumstances where you don't have a sub or a destroyer or another ship that can easily spot them. And I suppose the short answer is, I don't know how they're going to fix it if they can. Hopefully that mostly answers that question. Next one, what's my favourite World War II aircraft? That's a good question. I like the Mitsubishi Zero, the Focke-Wulf 190, ME262. I think I'd probably go with the 0 from a capability perspective, the 262 from a technological perspective, and the Focke-Wulf 190 from a visual perspective. Fun side note, might be a little bit of a family legend or myth, so to speak, but apparently my grandfather was involved in reverse engineering aircraft from the end of World War II to pull out any components and things or that could improve our own air power. Apparently he might have worked on some of the jet stuff from Germany, so a little bit of a tie back to the family. I don't know how much of that is myth and legend, but I do know that years down the track he actually built his own sort of like miniature Mustang that was flyable. And I remember that as a kid because he used to take me out when I was like 3 or 4 and stuff and sit me in his lap. Didn't even have a canopy, but it even had like little components where you could put like a smaller version of the same machine guns. Like you could actually see those cutouts on the wings, which is kind of cool. Next one, what does scripting your videos look like? So basically it depends on the video type, but each of them have got like a format or a template. And I just generally work with whatever the last script was and then rewrite as I go so that it's got the same sort of pattern and I'm incrementally improving things. With bluffs, some of the sections get moved around depending on the ship, but the primary focus is always to try and, like apart from in-depths and things, it's to get a lion's share of the usable information up front, sort of the first couple of minutes, so that if people don't have time, they can just watch the video for a minute or two, go, oh, yeah, cool, got the handle on it, it's answered a few key questions I've got, and move on. And sort of then flush it out further down the line. If given the choice between the two, Yamato or Musashi, service on ship context and in-game context, I can't answer the service on the ship, but Yamato or Musashi, Yamato, it's more accurate, Musashi's just trollish, but Musashi's good for credits. And the overmatch, ridiculous at tier 9. If I had complete control of what are warships, what lines classes would you add, remove from the game and why? I wouldn't implement subs. I would definitely be looking at support style aircraft carriers. And I'd definitely be looking at some way to solve the uncontested destroyer issue, because while there's a lot of things that could be done to aircraft carriers around spotting that could be improved, and a lot of their mechanics can be improved, the most powerful thing in the game is an uncontested destroyer played by someone with any ability to stay alive. Just purely on their own, that can cause flank collapses. So I'd be looking at some sort of spotting-based thing, but it's a really complicated issue, and to be honest, I'm not knowledgeable enough about game development to be in a place to solve it. At best, I'd be able to do is offer suggestions about how to tweak current things, and off the top of my head, don't know. Next one's from Earl. What makes me interested in naval history, and by extension, what are warships? I wasn't that interested in naval history. I got into naval history more, like I'd always been into World War II history in general, but more sort of holistically, I suppose you'd say. Like I knew things about the naval history aspect, but I didn't know anywhere near as much as I know now. I got into World of Warships because I'd played World of Tanks, and the pacing was better, the spatial aspect is much more enjoyable for me, and then I got into the naval history aspect as a byproduct of that. So, next one's from Scarly. What's my favourite book I've ever read, and what's my favourite movie I've ever watched, and favourite anime? Okay, so favourite book I've ever read. That's a very good question. I would probably say it'd be a Feast book, probably Talon of the Silver Hawk. Ramini Feast is a writer who did about 30 or 40 odd books in this one universe, and that's one of sort of the later ones at the start of a trilogy. Each series of books he did, he would start with a new character, and then as the series progressed, you'd start seeing some of the older characters, the more sort of, I suppose to say, monolithic, come back into it. But Talon of the Silver Hawk was just great writing. Favourite movie? I'm probably going to forget one that I love, but... good question. Probably Fifth Element? Something like that. Maybe original Star Wars, actually. A New Hope. Great movie. Favourite anime? think my current, what's my current top? Erased. There you go. If you haven't watched that, you need to watch it. It's just, it has a bit of time loop stuff going on, and I hate time loops, but it's not crucial to the story, but it's part of the story, and it's not a leg that it stands on. It's just brilliant. Erased. Alright. What is a museum ship that I would want to visit if given the chance? Probably not one that exists. I would love to visit HMS Malaya, whose motto is something like Marum Ferro Malice or something like that. I bring evil to the evil. She was a Queen Elizabeth class funded by the Federated Malay States, which is the precursor to Malaysia. And she just copped it from memory, just like left, right and centre. And she even survived to World War II. And I would love to see her in game. She doesn't exist, but I would love to be able to walk aboard a Queen Elizabeth class if there was one in existence. Otherwise, I'm not particularly fussed. Most of the ships that I'm most interested in don't have any surviving hulls. So she even flew the Malay flag, and I have her down as like a possible premium for Commonwealth. Okay, so let's conduct a thought experiment then. How many ship lines in the game run duplicate ships to what already exists or other nations have? And I'll give you a clue, both Pan-Asian lines. There's numerous premiums that are duplicates of other ships, but they're all quite distinctive for the most part because of mechanics and because of consumables and things like that. The Royal Navy light cruisers, for example, they don't have HE. Instantly you've got a point of difference there. And the argument could be made, but your Pan-Asians do. Yeah, well, they're focused on sort of the 130mm sort of caliber. You could easily make a line of Commonwealth cruisers with 152s with HE. Let's say give them some good alpha, but slower reload, so a little bit more towards the heavy cruiser scale. You could even from 8 to 10 or 7 to 10 or something go to some of the heavy cruiser designs that were pumped out for Australia and that sort of stuff and sort of expand on that idea. There's many areas that could easily be done, even just for cruisers alone. For destroyers, like go down the route of, okay, well, Mysore and Perth have quite good shell ballistics comparative to the ships they're based off. They've got good pen and things like that. Take that into the destroyers, do you know what I mean? Like, basically have the same sort of thing where you've got better ballistics and flatter arcs, but maybe not quite as good DPM. There's plenty of things to work with, and particularly with Commonwealth destroyers, I think there's a lot of wiggle room if subs are implemented as a class in some sort of balanced format, because a lot of them were very much ASW focused. So you can at least get cruisers, destroyers, and if you stretch it a little bit, like small escort carrier sort of thing, so sort of like Saipan kind of thing. We could do 6 to 10 on that quite easily as well. It's a very complicated question that I've thought about a lot and don't have a good answer for. So you could solve it from a gameplay perspective by having some sort of minimap spotting mechanic or whatever. The problem is, it's a bit like aircraft carrier spotting in that by having that ability to know where the enemy ships are, even without being able to see them, it removes the surprise element of the game. And one of the things that we've kind of found out from COTS and all that sort of stuff is that the surprise element, being that you don't know how many ships are where, is a really big important thing for many people as far as enjoying the game goes. And while it's not a huge deal for me, I can see how that impacts other people's enjoyment of the game. And this is a really complicated question. The whole concealment system, the game is completely built around it, and there's no good answer, in my view, to solve that problem. I think Wargaming is aware of the issue and doesn't have a solution for it, and that's why we haven't seen many significant changes in that regard, not since stealth firing was removed, which was a good thing. I think if they're going to solve aircraft carrier spotting, it'll be something more in line with solving the fighter issue. Because at the moment, the fighters are not fighters, they're spotters. If you run certain builds, it is kind of air cover, but it's still a limited zoning tool to protect a destroyer at best. And any decent aircraft carrier will just strike anyway and take the plane losses. There was an interesting idea from, I think it was Moggy 2, about how to solve this, which was that instead of having the fighter as a consumable, have it as a deployable asset that each plane squadron can use, and it takes travel time to travel to the zone. And then his suggestion was remove its ability to spot. So you can spot with the planes you're controlling, but the fighter then becomes an actual zoning anti-air tool that doesn't just, shoot down the number of planes it has in its wing. Do you know what I mean? Like things like that, which I think is a really, really interesting approach and a possible half solution. What other games am I playing besides Warships? At the moment, not a lot. I haven't had a lot of time this year, but recently I've played a lot of Valheim and a fair bit of Deep Rock Galactic, although that's kind of like a casual flotation these days. At the moment, I'm looking forward to getting into V Rising with my friends next weekend. And if that goes well, we'll probably sink a lot of time into that. But aside from that, I'm very much eyeing off a game called Return to Moria, which is a upcoming Lord of the Rings survival game where you play as dwarves in the Fourth Age, so post Lord of the Rings books, reclaiming Moria. So it looks like it'll be a bit Valheim, a bit DRG, sort of survival-y. It has a lot of potential, but we don't have a lot of details on it yet. There's only a few little blurbs and a couple of short clips of what the gameplay looks like, but mechanics-wise, we've got no idea. Because I think that there's a lack of effective instructional content on the game, essentially. When I first started playing, I was always looking for reviews on mid-tier ships, and there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. There'd just be like a boss game where someone gets like 200k or something, and like that's just like I was like, yeah, but once you hit tier 5, you've got questions about each ship in the line. Why isn't there anything for that? So I started making videos with that intent. But I just started making videos because, it's something I kind of enjoy doing and it's a creative outlet. And then that kind of realization that there's a complete dearth of mid-tier and non-tier 10 content, particularly to do with tech line ships. And that's kind of how I got hooked into it. And I love analysing things, so then some of the other types of videos kind of spun out of that. One-offs kind of came about because I was trying to release more regular content, and so the one-off kind of spun out of that because it's quicker edit. But now that I have even less time, I can't really do the regular type uploads. Next one's from Sherps. Milk or cereal first, and I should choose my next words carefully. Anyone who puts milk into a bowl and then pours the cereal in is a muppet. You put the cereal in first, then you put the milk in, because then you know the ratios that you need. Milk is much easier to control the pouring. Honestly. Next one from Sky. What is it with these curly ones? If I was stuck in space and time and finally got an opportunity to be teleported back into our dimension, which one of the following places would I choose? The Soviet Union in 1960, America in 1765, or the Lowlands in 1612? Easy answer, Soviet Union in 1960, because they're more likely to have access to hot water and baths and showers and things. And frankly, I don't mind getting dirty, but I love being able to come back to proper hygiene. Next one's from Scarsization. Do I have any pets at home, like cats or dogs? Yes, I have 2 cats. We want to get a dog, most likely a border collie, but we haven't had the yard or place to get one yet. So we're probably looking at it in the next couple of years when we move, because we're moving at the end of the year. Not your father, tea or coffee? I have tried for many, many years to like coffee. I can't. And I say this being a person who likes their tea as black and bitter as the whole of where my soul should be. And I think it's something to do with the core flavour of coffee. It just doesn't mix. I don't like coffee lollies, even if they're sweet. There's something about it. I don't mind bitter. I don't mind those types of flavours. It's just that coffee flavour. So yeah, I'm a tea person. Black and bitter, no sugar, no milk.
And that's it for the Q&A, folks. If you were interested in that Ukraine one, link is down in the comments. Otherwise, stay healthy, and I'll catch you in the next one.